Our last topic in the Administration 301 session is understanding programs. We are going to discuss how to add a brand new program going through the 4 steps. The first step into adding a new program is setting up basically the who, what, when, where, and why. The second step will be setting up our languages. Then we'll be setting up our program registration fields. The last step we will be setting up the logging fields. From the System Maintenance page, we're going to select Add Program. Once you open up Add Programs, it will take you to step 1 of the 4 processes of adding a brand new program. And for time-saving purposes, I went ahead and typed in some information in some of these fields that we're going to talk about. Under General Settings, we have the option of setting up whether or not this program is active or currently not active. Then we have the option of setting up who is going to be the responsible party at the library for answering patron questions. And here you can see in the contact name, I put in my name. And then in the contact email address, I have my email address. The next field is defining the staff security roles. Who's going to have access to this program? So you would want to put the lowest level of who is going to be eligible of having access to this program, and then anyone above that would also have access. The next field is the patron security role. And remember, we defined this under the security settings during this recording. I only have one role, which is patron. The next area is the text settings, and this would be the text information that the patron would see. For instance, under program name, I have Dragons, Dreams, and Daring Deeds. Then the abbreviation is D to the 4th power. The abbreviation is what would appear within the actual tab when going through all of your programs. The next field that we have is the description, and the description appears once you hover over the tab. Please join this program for fun and prizes. We also have eligibility requirement, and this is going to appear when the patron is registering for their program and we have set the eligibility. This is not setting the eligibility, it is just the text that would appear next to the eligibility requirement. So I have for ages 6 through 12. The next field that we have is instructional text, and this instructional text will appear during the logging process for the patron. It will appear at the top, giving them instruction on how to proceed with logging. The next section is registration settings. This is defining when they can start registering and who can start registering. As you can see, we can turn the patron registration on or off. Are we going to allow our patrons to register? Typically, yes, you want them to go online and register themselves to free up the staff time to answer some other questions for other patrons. The next set of fields is when do they start and when does the program end. So we have the registration start date and end date, and you can select that by selecting the drop-downs or by selecting the calendar to the right. As you see, I have mine set up for May 10th, ending August 10th. Then you're going to set up the start time and end time. After that, you're defining who can register. Is it just going to be eligible for individuals, or are we going to allow groups, such as preschools? Or is it going to be both? Are you going to allow individuals and groups? And as you can see, I already have my program marked as both. The login type. This is defining how they're going to log in. Are they going to only use their library card? Are they going to use just a username? Or we can select one of these, activate the other field during step number 3, the registration fields. The next field is the authentication type. How are we authenticating? Is it going to be an optional process or is it going to be required? Then we have the eligibility requirement. How are we going to mandate who is going to be eligible for this program? As you see, for my program, I have it eligible based on age. So the age minimum is 6, the age maximum is 12. But I could have set my eligibility requirement based on grade and set that they should be within the grades 3rd through 6th grade. Or I could have done it based on classification. A lot of times we don't want our adult members to have to put in their age, so we would set the classification based on an adult program, and they would choose that their classification is adult. Or you could set the eligibility for none and that this program is a free-for-all. Anybody can register. The next field is set up for family registration. This allows mom and dad to manage their offspring's programs as well as having programs of their own. I've obviously turned this on and I've set the maximum family members to 50. Member program exclusion goes along with the family registration. If this is selected yes, this program will not be an option during the family registration. It will not be a program that can be selected for any of the family members. Under quick registration, this allows a patron to quickly register for their program. However, it is not completing all of the required fields. So before a patron could actually go in and do any logging, they would have to complete their registration. Staff registration goes along with quick registration. It's the same. A staff can go in, put in the first and last name, and quickly register a patron, but the patron will still have to finish the registration, and you would do that by selecting Override. Next, we have the auto username and password generation. This will enable the system to automatically generate that username and password. Parental consent. This is the field on the registration page just marking letting the patron choose whether or not they have parental consent. You can modify the language by selecting the Edit Language button, and you can change any of the verbiage that we already have defaulted. If selected yes, the Facebook integration field will enable the patron to be prompted to have their statuses updated anytime that they register, log, or review during your summer reader program. You can edit the verbiage here for adding information to the Facebook. You can also edit the verbiage for when it displays on their Facebook page. By selecting Facebook configuration, we would have where we can do staff side prompts, meaning if the staff was registering or logging, submitting a review for a patron, they would also get the prompts. Then we have program registration. If I turn this on and edit the configuration, I can then modify the verbiage that would be displayed on the Facebook page. And I could do the same for the log entry. By selecting yes and selecting edit configuration, I again can modify that information. The next section is called the logging settings. Under logging settings, you're giving the patron the option of whether or not they're going to be able to log on the website. So I have mine as selected yes. Otherwise, if I have no, it's going to be up to my staff to do all the logging for my patron for this program. By selecting yes, I now have the option to choose my allow log date entry, meaning if they're only allowed to submit a log once per day, maybe they read some books on Monday, but they're not doing any of their logging on Friday, this gives them the opportunity to catch up because now they're able to actually submit for each day. Then we have the log start date and the log end date. I'm going to go ahead and put it as the same dates as I have my registration. The next section that we have is called review settings. Are we going to have the reviews turned off where a patron cannot make any reviews? Are we going to have them populate the information on the log entry page? Or are we going to have them populate the information on our home page? Either way, you're still going to come up with the same list of fields to modify your reviews. So I'm going to go ahead and select home page entry, and then I have the option to set up a reading list. Are my reviews going to be based off of a library reading list? We also have mediated reviews. By selecting yes, this means anytime a patron submits a review, it's going to come to a staff member to accept, deny, or to make modifications to that review before being displayed to our public. I always keep this as yes, and it's also our default. We also have anonymous reviews. Are we going to allow anonymous patrons to make reviews? I typically turn this off. I want to know who's making my reviews. We have the option of rating reviews. So another patron can rate another patron's review. By selecting this as yes, I can edit that language now. It'll say, was this review helpful? You can modify that to your library needs. The next field we have is review comments. Are we going to allow other patrons to make comments on another patron's review? By selecting yes, this opens up the other fields for mediated comments as well as anonymous comments. And our defaults are set where mediated is yes and anonymous is no. I want to know who's making comments to another patron, as well as I want to be able to review comments before they go out to that patron. I would hate to discourage a patron to make reviews because of a bad comment. The next section we have homepage settings. Under homepage settings, we're able to set our logout destination URL. Here is where you would put in your library's URL. As you can see, I'm going to go ahead and use evancedsolutions.com. The next field is allow patrons to print certificates. By selecting yes, I'm able to select one of my predefined certificates. So I've chosen my completion certificate, and now I choose when they're able to print that certificate. As you can see, we have certificate eligibility. Is it prize eligible, when they reach the minimum log quantity, or any time? I'm going to go ahead and leave it at prize eligible. The next field we have is number of reviews on the home page. This allows me to display as many reviews on the home page as I'd want. And right now, I'm going to go ahead and change that to 5 reviews. And then I could choose how I want them displayed. Do I want them random or most recent? I think random will suffice. Next, we have the RSS options. And this you can listen to a separate recording on how to set this up. The lower section of step number 1 in adding a brand new program is going to enable you to set up the logging types for your patron to track their progress towards your program goals. We're also able to set up how the prizes are going to be distributed. The first section that you see here is called Primary Log Type Settings. And as you can see, we also have a secondary log type settings with the similar fields. We give you, the library, the option to set up only one logging type, or you can give the patron 2 logging types. For instance, when they're registering for this program, they would be able to select maybe books or maybe chapters from the drop-down list. Or if you have a configuration of just one logging type, then they wouldn't have the option. It would just be solely books that they would perform their logging based on. The first field that you see here is we're going to define the logging type. If I open up my drop-down, as you can see, there's quite a few logging types here. If you do not find the logging type that you are going to use for this program, you can select the Edit button to the right of the field. By selecting the Edit button to the right, you will have the screen Program Logging Types List Maintenance will appear for you to append to the list. You can just type your new entry, select Save, and it adds it to the list. For today, I'm going to go ahead and select Books. By selecting Books, I am now able to set up my logging restrictions. By selecting Yes, it opens up multiple ways to set up this restriction. With the patron logging restriction set to No, this enables the patron to perform as many logs on any given day. If I select Yes, I'm now going to say that there are restrictions, such as the patron can only log 2 books per week, or the patron must log 2 books per log And then I could set a maximum quantity for the entire program. And they could only perform maybe 1 log per day. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. For instance, I'm going to put in the quantity increment of 2. The maximum quantity is going to be 6. These two fields regulate a drop-down on the logging screen, so the patron only has the option of selecting 2, 4, or 6 for their logging. So they must have read 2 books, at the very least, to perform a log. The maximum log entries per day is going to regulate how many log entries you are going to allow a patron to put into the system each day. I can regulate this to 1, or I could put another number in there. Maybe I want them to go ahead and put in up to 3 logs per day. The maximum quantity for the entire program. How many books are you going to allow the patron to log into the system? If I put 10 in here, that means the patron can only read up to 10 books for this entire program. So just to recap, the way that this example reads is that the patron can only make 1 log entry per day. That log entry must contain 2, 4, or 6 books. The patron is restricted to logging no more than 10 books total for the entire program. Now we've also broken this down to make it a little simpler for you by setting up maximum quantity per so many days and maximum log entries per so many days. If I was to put, let's say, 5 books within a 10-day period, what this means is that our patron could only log 5 books within a 10-day period. Then I can also set up the maximum log entries per so many days. So if I say 2 entries for every 3 days, that means that the patron can only log 2 entries for every 3 days. After you've set up your restrictions, you could set up your program goal. What is the goal for the number of books that the patron is going to read? Well, for my patron, I want them to read 10 books for the entire program. The next field that we have is the patron goal. By selecting yes, this means we're going to allow the patron to have their own goals. So the minimum books, I'm going to select 10, but the maximum is 20. I'm going to let them go above and beyond what our actual goal is. Once I'm done defining my logging restrictions and the logging type, the next thing I want to do is set up my prize settings. Setting up our primary prize settings, the default is set to no, meaning we're not going to award any prizes. But what fun is that? Let's set this to yes, so that our patrons are working towards something. So by setting this to yes, we're able to configure our prize message that goes out to our patrons by selecting the button to the right. The prize message maintenance allows you to configure what is displayed at the top when a patron reaches their prize goals. And as you can see, you have the option of choosing your English program, your Spanish, and then whatever other languages you have associated with this program. The information is just stating you're eligible for the following prizes, and it's pulling out information from the system by using these tags over here to the right. To incorporate this into our message, you just select the tag and move it into your statement. The prize quantity is allowing you to define what level and what's the quantity of the prizes. So in the instance that you're using tickets, maybe prize level 1 message, you get 5 tickets. So you're able to list the prize quantity maintenance. Once you've configured your prize message and your prize quantity, now you're going to set up how you're going to earn those prizes as a patron. And we give you 4 options. We have linear, nonlinear, daily goals, and then we have a manual process. Linear allows prizes to be awarded at intervals determined by a number entered in the interval field. Nonlinear allows the entry of multiple prize intervals separated by commas into the interval field. Daily goals is similar to nonlinear in the way it is configured. Daily goals allows a patron becomes eligible for a prize when they meet the daily goal a set number of times. Let's take a look at an example of linear. By putting in a 3 in the interval field, a 2 in the prize level, and prize level for the entire program, let's put 10. What this is stating is that the patron is eligible for a prize each time they read 3 books. They're eligible to earn 2 prizes per week, and for the entire program, they're eligible to earn a total of 10 prizes. Then I'm going to define that the week starts on Monday. Let's take a look at nonlinear. By selecting nonlinear, sort of the same concept, but now I can separate this with different intervals. So for instance, 1, 3, and 5. The prize level for the entire program, let's put 6. And we're going to keep the time frame at per week, and the week starts on Monday. By putting the 1, 3, and 5 within the intervals field, the patron is eligible for the prize when they have read 1 book, then 3 books, and then 5 books or more. Prize levels for the entire program is going to be 6. That's the maximum number of prizes. And again, the information is based on per week, and the week starts on Monday. I'm going to go ahead and leave my prize level set to nonlinear and have it set the way that I have it now. Let's go down and take a look at secondary logging types. With this option selected, that means I'm giving my patrons the option to choose between books and another logging type when they register for the program. And for this one, I'm going to go ahead and select pages. I'm not going to set up any restrictions for this one, so I'm going to leave the patron logging restrictions as no, and the program goal is going to be 2,000 pages. I'm not going to set up any patron goals, but I am going to set up prizes. Now the prizes are going to be about how many pages they read. So when I select prizes yes, I'm going to select daily goals for this one. And my example is going to be, I'm going to put in 3, 6, and 10. And my daily goal minimum is going to be 10. My daily goal maximum is going to be 50. So the result is, to earn a prize, the patron must read between 10 and 50 pages each day for 3 days, 6 days, and 10 days. If the patron reaches their daily goal, they are eligible for a prize at day 3, day 6, and day 10. If I was to choose manual allows the staff to control a patron's log progress manually using checkboxes that appear in the prize management page. The number of checkboxes that appear is determined by the levels field. For example, if levels equals 3, then the checkboxes appear in the prize management page that staff may use to mark patron progress. After you're done setting up your logging types and your price settings, you will want to go down and choose how they're going to select their multi-log settings. We have 2 options: patron logs one logging type or patron logs either logging type. The patron logs either logging type is a little more complex, meaning when they process their logging that they're going to either choose pages or books anytime during the program. And that's where it gets a little hairy on awarding prizes. Most of the time, you want to give them one option and one option only throughout the program. Lastly on this page, we have other prize settings. Now, are you going to give the patron a prize for registering for your program? If so, you would select Yes, update your prize message like we had done earlier, and then we can award the number of prizes. You can also award a prize for the secondary program goal prize by selecting Yes, and then you would just put in a percentage and the number of prizes for this. Once you're done, you're just going to select Save, and we're going to move to step 2 of setting up our program. Step number 2 is setting up our program language text setup. As you can see on this page, it is divided into 2 sections. The first section we have is assigned languages. And within assigned languages, the system automatically assumes the default should be English. As you can see, we already have that one marked. Over under assigned languages are the languages that we set up under the system maintenance page that we talked about earlier. Now remember, when we discuss this topic, you can have multiple languages of the same language. For instance, this adult program is an English text setup. However, it is geared toward, or the verbiage within this section is geared towards our adult patrons. So I would want to select that for my adult programs. If I wanted to add this one to this program, I would put a check mark in the Add column next to that language and select the Add button at the bottom of the page. By doing so, it adds it to my assigned languages. Most likely, I do not need 2 English languages for my patrons to choose from. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to default the adult program language, and I'm going to remove the English just by placing a check mark in the Remove column next to English and selecting the Remove button. Now that I've done so, English is back over in the unassigned languages. It does not delete it from the system. I can also add my Spanish and my French programs by placing a check mark in the Add column and selecting Add. And now I have my 3 languages assigned to this program that my patrons can choose from. Step number 3 is setting up the fields for your registration. This is for when the patron goes into the system and they register for your program, what fields do you want them to answer or want to display? The first column that you see here is the order column, the order as to which the field will be displayed on the registration page. The second column is a list of the fields that we offer, as well as giving you the option to set up custom registration fields, and we'll get to that in just a second. The next column is the enabled column. By putting a check mark in this column next to the field, that means you want to turn on that field for it to be on the registration page. As you can see, I have multiple options here already set up. The next column is the required column. This is where the asterisk is going to appear to the left of that field, letting the patron know that that field is required, and they will not be able to move on to the next step or to saving that registration without populating that field. There will be certain fields that you will automatically have required because they're already required in our system. They're defaulted items. And it's all based on what we set up in the registration settings on step number 1. The next column is a list column. This is where we can define certain lists. For instance, if I wanted school district a list, I would enable that field. I can require that field, and then I can generate a list for that field. By turning this field on, it's going to enable a field under the list group on the system maintenance page for me to maintain. So I could start listing all of the school districts in my library's area, and then I do not have to worry about my patrons having to type in that school district name. The next column is the search column. You're able to search on any of the fields that you see here. This helps you find certain patrons in certain groups. So for instance, if I wanted all of the patrons that are a part of Northwestern Consolidated School District, I would want to make that a searchable field, and then I could search for all of the patrons in any of my programs. The last column on this page is to change the order of your fields and how they're displayed on the registration page. The way that you would do that is choose the field that you would like to move up or down, and then select that arrow. And as you can see, if I choose Parent Guardian First Name and select the up arrow, it moves it up a space. If I would like to move it back down, I select the down arrow, and it moves it down a field. Let's talk about custom fields. Here on line 28 on my page, I have custom registration entry number 2 because I already have a custom field in line 27. So yours may be a little different. They are all located at the bottom of your page. I can select the Edit button, and now it's asking me to type in my field question. This field question is going to be, what is your favorite animal? The field note is going to appear to the right of the field entry that the patron will be populating on the registration page. And as you can see, I put, please select your favorite animal. The name descriptor is just the field label for within our system. It doesn't display where the patron would see this information. So I'm just going to put animal. Now I can choose the input type. Do I want it a text, which would display a short field text area like you see here in the first section, or a text area where the patron could fill out a more description as to maybe why a cat is their favorite animal. Or you could choose a yes/no, where we could change our field question to, is a cat your favorite animal, yes or no? Or we could choose a list, where we're defining a list for the patron to choose from. I'm going to go ahead and choose list. And when I select save, it's now going to open up a field or a button where I can select to complete the information for that list. When I select Edit List, the Custom Registration Entry 2 Selection List Maintenance page appears. Now I can start populating this list. I can continue to append to this list, or I can just close out. Then I could close out my custom registration page, and you will see that it's been added to line 28, where I can enable it, I can require it, or I can make it a searchable field. There's one other tab on this page, and it's called Group. By selecting Group, you're now setting up the registration for your group patrons. Remember, those are like the preschools. What fields do you want them to populate for their registration? And it may differ from what you would want your individuals to populate. You would do the same process. You would enable fields, you would require them, you can make fields a list, make them searchable, change the order. You can also create custom fields for this section. Once you're done, you would just select Save and move on to step number 4. The last step in setting up your program is setting up the program logging setup. What appears on this page obviously is broken out into 2 sections. The first section is broken out with the red line around it, and it's called the log entry section. The second section is called the review entry, and as you can see, it's divided with the blue line. The fields can be processed in either or both groups, depending on what you select. For instance, under the log entry, we have the quantity, which is the quantity of books, chapters, pages, or whatever we've selected for our logging. We definitely want to enable that field. We also probably would want to require that field, but it's not a requirement. I can uncheck that as needed. I can include that field in the log summary on the patron review page. You can also select whether that field is available for the mobile device. We have review, title, author, genre, ISBN number, rating, and then you can also add custom fields. All of these fields will be populated during the logging process. You can do the same thing for reviews, for the patron to fill out during the review process. We also have the option to require those fields. You can also make those fields public, so what is displayed on your homepage and the patron's homepage in the review section. And then you also have the option for setting up specific fields for the mobile devices. The last column that you see is the search column. This is for reviews, and you can make that information searchable. If you wanted to search for specific books, you would want to make the title searchable. You can also create lists. If you wanted to enable the title field in the log entry and the review entry, and then make it a list where a patron would select from a specific list to make a review or to log specific books, then you would check this box and update the list box. Next to the list column, we have the text column, where you can enable that field where the patron could choose from adding a list or typing in that title. And lastly, you can change the order of which these fields are placed on either screen. Let's talk about custom fields. It's essentially the same as what we had seen in step number 3 under registration, but now these are custom fields within either the log page or the review entry. Typically, I like to say that this review gets a little confusing if I have my review set up on the log page summary page. Example, review would be up at the top that says, alright, under the log, give me your review of the book. Well, the patron thinks that they're reviewing the book. And then down below, it's going to bring that field in again, and it's going to ask for that review. That gets a little confusing. What I suggest is create a custom field called "Please give a brief summary of your book." And obviously I want this as a text area, so I'm going to select Save. Now that's going to be a new field that I can choose. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to deselect under the log entry the Enabled column. Now I want to mark the enabled next to my new field, and I'm going to require that. I'll go ahead and include it in my log summary and as well as in my mobile device. This will enable a separate field for the log entry that says, give me an overview of your book. And then in the review section, I want them to give me their review, what their thoughts and opinions are, and then I would want to make that public and also enable it for the mobile device. And now I have two separate fields that are defining exactly what I'm looking for. Once I'm done making modifications to the program logging setup, I would just select Save, and now my program is completely configured and we can go out and start registering for this program. You have now completed session 301. However, there are a lot of other things that you can do with our system, such as authentication setup, email setup, RSS feeds, and creating your own style sheets. So make sure you listen to those recordings as you need them. If you need further information from Evanced, check out evancedsolutions.com or try to find your answers on our wiki, which is wiki.evancedsolutions.com. If you have any other questions, feel free to contact our support area. Thank you.